Imagine squeezing through a hole no bigger than the opening of a washing machine. You move forward 1 inch at a time. The air becomes colder. The cave becomes darker. There's no room to turn around. Then, you realize something terrifying. You went the wrong way. Your head is now pointing downward. Your feet are above you. Your body is wedged so tightly between solid rock that you can't move, not even a single inch. Now imagine staying in that position for hours. Rescuers arrive. They pull. They dig. They build an elaborate rope system. Hundreds of people pray. But despite every effort, nobody can free you. This isn't the plot of a horror movie. It actually happened. And it became one of the most heartbreaking cave rescue attempts ever recorded. This is the story of John Edward Jones, a young husband, a father-to-be, and an experienced caver whose simple family outing turned into an unimaginable tragedy. But how could someone become trapped so completely that over 100 rescuers couldn't save him? What mistakes led to that moment? And why was the cave permanently sealed forever afterward? To answer those questions, we have to go back to the beginning. Before this story became international news, John Edward Jones was simply a husband, a father, and someone who loved adventure. John grew up in a family that enjoyed exploring caves. For him, caving wasn't about chasing danger. It was about curiosity, teamwork, and discovering places few people ever get to see. Crawling through narrow passages, navigating underground chambers, and overcoming physical challenges were experiences he had enjoyed since he was young. By 2009, John was 26 years old. He was married to his wife, Emily, and the couple already had a young daughter. Even more exciting, they were expecting another child. Life was busy, but by all accounts, John was optimistic about the future. During the Thanksgiving holiday, John traveled back to Utah to spend time with his family. Like many families reunited after months apart, they wanted to do something memorable together. One idea quickly came up: visit Nutty Putty Cave. For years, the cave had been a popular destination for amateur explorers. Thousands of people had crawled through its twisting tunnels. Many described it as challenging but exciting, a place where ordinary people could experience the thrill of underground exploration. But there was another side to Nutty Putty Cave. Unlike large tourist caves with wide walking paths, this cave was a maze. Its passages twisted in every direction. Some tunnels became so tight that explorers had to squeeze through them on their stomachs, pushing forward with only inches of space around their bodies. Even experienced cavers admitted that it was easy to lose your sense of direction. Underground, every tunnel could begin to look the same. A single wrong turn could lead into passages that became progressively smaller. Still, on that November day, John and several family members entered the cave expecting an adventure they would remember for all the right reasons. None of them could have imagined that, within hours, one wrong decision inside the darkness would trigger a rescue operation unlike anything the cave had ever seen. And the most dangerous part wasn't a collapsing tunnel. It wasn't running out of oxygen. It was something almost impossible to believe. John had entered a passage that became so narrow and so steep that once gravity pulled him forward, turning back was no longer an option. Deep beneath the surface, there are no signposts, no sunlight, no clear sense of direction. Only twisting tunnels, rough stone, and the narrow beam of a flashlight cutting through the darkness. As John and his relatives explored Nutty Putty Cave, they eventually reached an area where several tight passages branched off. One of the cave's best-known routes was called the Birth Canal, a very narrow crawl that adventurous cavers often attempted before turning around. At some point, John believed he was entering that passage, but he wasn't. Then the tunnel became too narrow to reverse. John kept moving forward, using his elbows and fingertips to inch ahead. As the passage angled downward, gravity began pulling more of his body weight toward his head. Eventually, his chest became tightly wedged between the cave walls. His hips were pinned. His knees could no longer bend enough to push backward. He tried to shift. Nothing. He tried to breathe deeply. The surrounding rock left almost no room for his chest to expand. Then came the terrifying realization. He was trapped. Completely trapped. Even worse, he was stuck almost upside down, with his head lower than his feet. At first, John remained remarkably calm. He called for help. His voice echoed through the cave until another explorer heard him. Family members rushed toward the sound, hoping they could simply pull him free. But every attempt failed. The tunnel was so narrow that almost no one could reach him properly. There wasn't enough space to stand. There wasn't enough space to turn around. Rescuers could barely reach his legs. Soon, it became clear this wasn't a rescue that friends or family could handle alone. Emergency services were called. One by one, trained cave rescuers entered the cave carrying ropes, harnesses, pulleys, helmets, and specialized equipment. Many believed that with enough manpower and the right tools, John could still be saved. After all, he was alive. He was conscious. He was talking. But they were about to discover an invisible danger that made this rescue far more complicated than anyone had imagined. It wasn't just the rock holding John in place. It was his own body. Being trapped upside down for hours places enormous strain on the heart and lungs. Blood begins pooling toward the head, making it harder for the heart to circulate oxygen effectively. Breathing also becomes more difficult because the diaphragm can't move as freely, especially when the chest is compressed by solid rock. Every passing minute made the rescue more urgent. The race against time had begun, but inside Nutty Putty Cave, even reaching John safely was an exhausting challenge. And soon, disaster would strike the rescue effort itself. As word spread that a man was trapped deep inside Nutty Putty Cave, rescuers from across the region rushed to the scene. What they found was unlike a typical rescue. John wasn't trapped in a large chamber where equipment could easily be set up. He was lodged inside an extremely narrow passage, head first and nearly upside down, with barely enough room for another person to reach him. Simply getting to him required rescuers to crawl through tight, twisting tunnels while carrying ropes, pulleys, carabiners, and medical supplies. One experienced cave rescuer managed to reach John. They spoke with him, checked on his condition, and tried to keep him calm. Throughout the ordeal, John remained conscious for many hours. Despite the pain and fear, he was able to communicate with the rescue team and answer their questions. The rescuers knew they couldn't pull him out by hand. The angle of the tunnel and the force pinning his body against the rock made that impossible. Instead, they built a complex rope and pulley system, anchoring it securely to the cave walls. The plan was to apply steady, controlled force to slowly lift John upward and free him a little at a time. After hours of careful work, the system began to work. For the first time since becoming trapped, John started to move. Just a few inches, then a little more. Hope spread through the rescue team. But deep underground, every piece of equipment had to withstand tremendous stress. Then, without warning, one of the anchor points failed. The pulley system suddenly gave way. The ropes snapped loose from their position, and John slid back into the narrow passage. The progress made over hours was lost in seconds. Worse still, he became wedged even more firmly than before. For the rescuers, it was a devastating setback. They immediately began assessing whether the system could be rebuilt, but time was running out. John had now spent many hours suspended almost upside down. His body was under extreme physical strain. The confined position made breathing increasingly difficult, and his circulation was being severely affected. Medical personnel understood the danger. Even if they managed to free him, he would still require urgent treatment. Yet no one wanted to give up. Rescuers continued working with determination, encouraged by John's courage and the hope that one more attempt might succeed. But the cave had become an unforgiving trap. The longer the rescue continued, the more impossible the situation became. Eventually, After many hours trapped underground, John stopped responding. Despite every effort by the rescue team, he could not be saved. What began as a Thanksgiving family adventure had ended in one of the most tragic cave accidents in modern history. The rescue operation was over, but the difficult decisions were only beginning. When the rescue officially came to an end, rescuers faced one final, heartbreaking challenge. John's body was still trapped deep inside the narrow passage. Recovering it would mean sending more people into one of the most dangerous sections of the cave, a place that had already proven how unforgiving it could be. Engineers, rescue specialists, and cave experts carefully evaluated the situation. Their conclusion was painful but clear. Attempting to recover John's body would place additional rescuers at an unacceptable level of risk. The passage was simply too narrow and unstable, and another accident could easily claim more lives. With the agreement of his family, the decision was made to leave John where he was. Soon afterward, officials permanently sealed the section of Nutty Putty Cave where the accident occurred, and eventually closed the cave entirely to the public. Today, that narrow tunnel remains John's final resting place. It is one of the few places in the world where a natural cave became both a memorial and a tomb. The tragedy sparked important conversations throughout the caving community. Many experienced explorers pointed out that caves are among the least forgiving environments on Earth. Unlike climbing a mountain or hiking a trail, there is often no quick escape underground. A single wrong turn, a tunnel that narrows just a few more inches, or a moment of overconfidence can become impossible to reverse. Following John's accident, many cave organizations strengthened safety recommendations. Greater emphasis was placed on proper route planning, exploring only with experienced teams, understanding cave maps, and recognizing when a passage is simply too tight to enter. John's story is sometimes misunderstood as one of recklessness, but those who knew him describe something different. They remember a loving husband, a devoted father, and a kind person who shared an interest in adventure with his family. His death was not the result of seeking fame or taking a careless risk. It was the result of a tragic mistake in an environment where even small errors can have enormous consequences. More than 15 years later, his story continues to be shared around the world, not to sensationalize tragedy, but to remind us of the immense power of nature and the importance of humility when exploring it. Some places on Earth are breathtaking. Some are mysterious, and some demand absolute respect. Nutty Putty Cave was one of them. If there's one lesson from John's story, it's this: adventure can inspire us to discover incredible places, but every adventure should begin with preparation, respect for the environment, and the wisdom to recognize when it's time to turn back. Because sometimes, the smallest decision can change everything. Thank you for watching. If this story moved you, consider subscribing for more true-life documentaries that explore remarkable events, extraordinary survival stories, and the lessons they leave behind.